Hello everybody, and welcome to what I am going to call Chemical Whispers episode 5.5. And that's because instead of doing another cinematic episode with a bunch of character dialogue and moving the story forward and things like that, I think now would be a good time to take a break and just talk about how I have the game set up for this series and maybe go over some story points a little bit too. This idea came about as a suggestion from Mr. Hotch, I believe, who is a longtime subscriber of this channel. Thank you very much, Hotch. It's been nice having you around. Also, as a suggestion from a Mr. See You Later, who also creates some great content, great Skyrim content on his own YouTube channel. I'll put a link in the description to his stuff. He said he might like to have a little bit of insider info on the story. I'm not going to solve any mysteries, but I will do a little bit of a recap and maybe point you at some hints of where things are going. But first, I would like to talk about the game mechanics and mods and things like that. So first and foremost, let's talk about difficulty. I have this set at Legendary difficulty, and I have had it set at Legendary difficulty since the very start of this playthrough, excuse me. And that was nice because it let me get into the headspace of Alchunil a little bit, who was a fresh fugitive from Morrowind, kind of migrating into hostile territory there in Windhelm. And playing at Legendary difficulty as a fresh character is very tough, even if you're doing the sneaky archer type of character, which Alchunil is at his base, I would say. It's still kind of a tense experience, and I think that Alchunil's experience would be similarly tense. He was a little desperate, as was I, to get started. Which is why we were kind of forced to explore the sewers of Windhelm, which was added by the Sewers of Skyrim mod, which is a great mod, highly suggested. And kind of just hunt skeever and slaughterfish and things like that. And we got our sneak level leveled up, as well as our archery, and got to where we were able to accumulate some gear and learned some potions and like effects of ingredients and stuff, to where we could start creating some health potions and poisons and things like that that helped us out. And eventually Alchunil got strong enough to move on, but we'll talk about that in a moment. Moving on, I wanted to talk about the uncapper settings. And I know previously in other episodes, or I'm sorry, other series, I have actually done some creative stuff with overcapping certain skills to convey the feeling of weaknesses of certain character concepts. I chose to forego that this time just because I found that ended up being very restrictive, which was kind of the point. Certain characters just don't have talent in every single skill. You're going to have people who are socially awkward that are not going to be able to level their speech skill beyond anything past something that's like novice or apprentice level. And that's just the best that they're ever going to be able to do with the way that character is made up. Like I said, it became very restrictive. It became hard to kind of evolve the character late game. But it also had unintended consequences as far as some of the mods and some of the gameplay that was going on in terms of like trainers and things like that. Progressions were just a little bit wacky, so you'd go get some skill training and it would level you almost all the way up, but just to skip the last few skill levels to actually level you up. Then you have to go finish that skill progression up somewhere else. So there was that, and also honed metal. Overcapping smithing basically destroyed honed metal. It turns out that the smith's perks are tied to your own level cap in smithing somehow. I'm not really sure exactly how that mod works, but overcapping my smithing skill to, say, 25 for a character who didn't have much talent for crafting, it had the effect that all smiths in the world could not craft anything better than steel. So that was a major hindrance for those characters. So instead, I'm just using Dirty Weasel's Uncapper INI settings for Ordinator. That INI actually uncaps all the skills to either 255 or 355. I don't remember off the top of my head, but it kind of slows progression down for everything as well. I'm just using that file straight up without making any changes except for alchemy skill progression, which I doubled. So since Alchunil is very talented in terms of alchemy, I figured it made sense to make it so that he levels up faster in alchemy than pretty much any other skill. Okay, what else am I going to talk about here? Let's move on to Alchunil's race, which is Dunmer. Alchunil is a Dunmer from Morrowind. As noted in the first 2 episodes, he is a fugitive from Morrowind. I am using the Imperious Races mod, Races of Skyrim mod, which is a racial overhaul for Skyrim. And it gives Dunmer the Strange Whispers passive. I couldn't catch those dragonflies. That's annoying. So periodically it will point out, it'll highlight in gold some random NPC, usually a hostile NPC, for you to kill. And if you kill it, you get something called Spirit Favor, and you can use that Spirit Favor to call on your spirit ancestors to help you fight, or a sort of like a spirit shrouded cloak that gives you more fire resistance and more armor. Things like that. I just thought that the Strange Whispers fit in really well with the story that I was trying to tell. And I really do want to tie these Strange Whispers into the story. I just am working out the kinks on that, and well, we'll go into more of that. I will unveil that later in the actual cinematic episodes. I don't want to give anything away. Okay, so level right now. We don't have a level up, but we do have a perk to use. I don't know if I'll use that in this episode, but we are at level 29 right now, so I would say probably around mid-range level for a Skyrim character. We are focusing on mainly sneak and alchemy. We are doing some archery here, but as you can see, I haven't really invested too heavily in the perk tree there. Sneak, I have invested pretty heavily in. Pickpocket a little bit, just for the reverse pickpocketing of poisons into enemies. I like the gameplay option of, or the gameplay variety, that having the option of reverse pickpocketing a poison onto an enemy without having to actually coat a blade or an arrow in the poison before you attack them with it. It just kind of adds a variety of gameplay for more interesting action sequences, I think. So that I did invest in. I might invest a little bit more in that just to make that a little easier for Alchunil. But as you can see, I've most heavily invested in alchemy, and we are 1 alchemy level away from being able to take the level 80 stuff here. But yeah, mainly investing and focusing on alchemy and sneak. Let's see, attributes. What I've been doing so far is kind of just investing in health because that's my biggest weakness so far. And then stamina for dodging and sprinting to get the hell away from enemies if they do detect me, because Alchunil is very squishy. Especially at legendary difficulty, he usually takes 2, maybe 3 shots, sometimes 1 depending on the enemy, and he's dead. So yeah, I've been focusing on health. Stamina's next, and magicka after that. He hasn't had any use for magicka yet, except for spell research, which we'll talk about in a little bit. And stamina, obviously, with the dual-wielded power attacks and dodging is of secondary importance to him. Okay, so that's about it for core gameplay mechanics. Let's move on to some of the more important mods that I'm using. First and foremost, the alternate start that I am using is Skyrim Unbound. In my experience, I find that to be much better than Live Another Life in terms of the granularity that it provides on your starting situation. So if we look at this here, Alchunil knows no spells. He is not inherently talented in magic at all. The only spells he knows are the ones that were granted to him as vampiric gifts that we went through. That was either episode 3 or 4. Just the stuff that's granted by becoming a vampire through the Sacrosanct mod, which I'm also using. Alchunil is also not Dragonborn. He can't shout, he can't read word walls. We actually aren't even spawning dragons, so even if there were dragons, he wouldn't be able to absorb souls or anything like that. That kind of allows me to focus entirely on Alchunil's story, which has nothing to do with Alduin. Nobody's eaten any worlds in his story. Starting gear was pretty basic. It was refugee starting gear, I would say. Common clothes, a hood, no weapons. I think I gave him like 1,000 coins just because he was kind of well-to-do, coming from Morrowind, being a master chef with a powerful counselor. So he did have some money on his way, so he wasn't completely hung out to dry. But I did console in a steel crossbow for him to use and some bolts. But I think that was about it. Maybe an iron dagger, just so he had something to field dress animals and skin and gather ingredients from them, which is a big part of what he does on a daily basis. Spell selection, as I said, where he didn't know any spells to start off with. He still doesn't know. I am using the spell research mod, which is a different way of unlocking spells, learning spells, which requires a lot of research, trial and error, and Alchunil has not learned any spells from any of that yet, but he is very studious. He is working on it. I have some plans for magic usage for this character. We just haven't gotten there yet. Starting location, obviously, we started in Windhelm as a refugee. Special options, I don't know that I actually did anything here. Yeah, there was nothing special here. But as you can see, Skyrim Unbound, it gave me all of the options necessary to start this character the way I wanted to start him. To play from the very beginning of Alchunil's journey in Skyrim. So that's good. I also mentioned that I'm running Imperious Races of Skyrim, and I think I talked about all that already, so I will skip that on the list there. Ooh, Nirnroot. Glowing Nirnroot. Every one of these is an invisibility potion, so Alchunil is very eager to pick all these up, and that's really why he's sort of cruising along the banks of this river, feeding into Lake Honrick here. Excuse me. Just outside of Riften, where the story is kind of left off at this point. I am also using Sacrosanct Anais Ion's vampire overhaul. As you can see, I'm a big fan of Anai's work here. I'm using pretty much all of his overhauls that he's released recently, and not so recently maybe. So yeah, the Sacrosanct, it is a nice vampire overhaul. It adds some really interesting changes that are very different from vanilla. So as Alchunil kind of discovers his own vampiric status, his life as a vampire, I'm kind of discovering it along with him because I really don't know this mod very well. It adds some very interesting abilities and systems and even little quests here and there. As far as, you know, feeding to get stronger and staying well fed to avoid degrading. It makes more sense in the vanilla system of you get stronger the hungrier you are and the more feral you become. You also get granted hemomancy spells, which we've seen previously in other episodes, kind of indirectly. I haven't really made a big deal of it in the story, but as he feeds on more and more people and lethally drains them, he gets access to more powerful spells. All canines are valuable prey for Alchunil mainly because of their teeth. Canine teeth provide both the damage health effect and lingering damage health. So they allow Alchunil to create very powerful poisons that both do upfront damage and damage over time, which allowed us to two-shot a giant bear in one of the previous episodes on legendary difficulty. So that's important to Alchunil. He will go after canine prey as much as he can. Sorry to all the dog lovers out there. I also am one. I feel terrible every time I kill one. But this isn't me. This is Alchunil. Don't blame me. Blame the vampire. Okay. Next on the list is Predator Vision. Gopher's Predator Vision. That is what provides the... I just activated it, but I don't think there are any living beings. Oh, there's some over there. You can kind of see them glowing orange all the way over there. This is the namesake Predator Vision power for vampires. It allows you to sense enemies through walls at distances in the dark without being able to see them. Very important for Alchunil, and I think just a really cool skill that makes a lot of sense in this context. Also provided by Predator Vision, the mod, is Night Vision, which it allows me to bind the power to the same hotkey as the toggle for the ENB. So the ENB shader makes everything really dark and it kind of takes over everything. Normally, night vision powers do not work if you're using an ENB. But if you can bind your night vision ability to the same key as the ENB toggle, you can both switch off the ENB reshader and activate your night vision with one button press. And in my opinion, this is almost, well, for me, it's necessary for YouTube content creation with the ENB that I'm running, just because the ENB darkens everything up a lot, especially at dusk and dawn times and in certain interior areas. And the YouTube encoder also really darkens the video. So a lot of times when you're running recordings using an ENB like I am and trying to view it on YouTube, it's just complete darkness all over the place. Not very compelling footage, I gotta say. So the next major mod that I'm using is CACO, or the Complete Alchemy and Cooking Overhaul. And this was a big one for me. I haven't used this hardly at all, really, previously, before this. So that kind of also helps put me in Alchunil's headspace, because as I know the vanilla alchemical effects and ingredients really, really well, I really don't know the CaCO effects. I'm sorry, let me back up a second there. The CaCO mod actually overhauls the ingredients, adds a bunch of new ingredients, and kind of shuffles up their effects that you can learn from each one of them. It adds some new effects as well as ingredients. So it's a discovery process for me as well as Alchunil. So that kind of helps get me in his headspace a little bit more too when it comes to learning or writing dialogue for Alchunil and kind of his story and conveying a fish out of water feeling, fledgling alchemist feeling and things like that. It helps me write dialogue for a character like that if I also am discovering these new things along with them. I am running patches for CaCO and Ordinator, so those all play nice together. There are major conflicts between the two. Ordinator by itself, the alchemy tree becomes really overpowered really quickly. CaCO really helps to balance that out a lot more. So I really like the changes that it... Wow, that's one fast-moving butterfly, isn't it? So that really helps balance things out a little bit. It creates some more interesting gameplay instead of just being able to use invisibility potions all the time and hit people with paralysis poisons all the time. It gets pretty dry, pretty boring pretty quickly, but with CaCO things are rebalanced in a way where it's kind of always challenging, and those super powerful invisibility and paralysis effects are harder to find. I'm also running a patch between CaCO and Sacrosanct, the vampire mod, so that health regeneration potions, both health recovery and health regeneration, and I'm not sure about health fortification, maybe. None of that is effective on vampires. So for a vampire to recover health via a potion, you have to use a blood potion. And that is why you see him extract blood all the time from sleeping enemies or dead, recently vanquished foes. So that's really important to be able to get some kind of regenerative potions, because as I said earlier, Alchunil is pretty fragile physically. Okay, moving on. Ordinator. We talked about Ordinator already. Spell Research. That is a mod that I've been very interested in for a very long time. And that is a spell discovery mod that allows you to, instead of just buying spell tomes from spell tome vendors and learning them instantly, it allows you to learn spells through your own research. Little bunny rabbit's going down. Where'd he go? Yeah, for some reason I feel bad about killing the canines in this game, but killing rabbits is hilarious. I don't know, maybe I'm a terrible person. Come on. So yeah, spell discovery. Alchunil is very studious by nature. He doesn't have any inherent magical talent or ability other than what was gifted to him by turning into a vampire. But he definitely has the capability to learn, and I think as he becomes more curious about things and discovers more research material and makes more of his own conclusions about things, that he will learn more spells, and I would like that to become more of a part of his story. So I'm looking forward to that. I'm also running a mod now that removes spell tomes from leveled lists. Ooh, it looks like there's something very dead over there. We'll have to check that out. So there are still hand-placed spell tomes about the world that he will happen onto. I still don't think he will be able to do much with them. but it removes the option and the temptation. Oh, it's not dead. It's just a squash. It removes the temptation of just willy-nilly, buying spell tomes and learning them without doing the due diligence of researching the spell before I learn it. Also using honed metal, and mostly that is going to be for, tempering armor and weapons to get them upgraded while Alchunil still gets his head wrapped around the whole blacksmithing business. Once he levels up blacksmithing a little bit and can do some more things on his own, he will be able to craft blacksmithing fortification potions that will enable him to upgrade his gear further than any of the smiths in Skyrim. But until then, it helps to be able to go to Yorlin Greymane in Whiterun, the legendary blacksmith, and have him either create weapons and armor or temper them up like he did with this Blue Dragon Ninjato here. That's how I got this up to legendary, was by finding the sword out in the wild and paying Yorlin Greymane to do the improvements for me. The same with the ringmail armor. I got that smithed up to legendary too. That helps a fledgling or even journeyman character at legendary difficulty. Just kind of boosts damage and things like that. And as I've mentioned, I've also fixed the issues that I've had in previous series where smithing vendors could only smith or create armor and blacksmith that was steel level or lower. What's that dude doing up there? Do a quick save here just in case I do something really stupid here in the next few minutes. Alright, 2 more mods to mention, and then we'll move on to story discussion. So, as suggested by the viewer that goes by the name Yolrin Lask, which sounds like the Dovazul, the dragon language. I don't know what it means. Something about fire, I believe, which is Yol. But thank you for the suggestion on silent UI. I was getting kind of annoyed at the little the little drum rolls that would happen whenever you would discover a new area or level up or anything like that. That removes all of those sounds. So that should be a bit of an addition by subtraction situation here. So by subtracting out those noises, it should add to the cinematic feel of the videos that I'm producing. I was able to pickpocket all of his potions. And we were able to level up Sneak. And as you could see there, we did not hear the drum roll there, which was nice. I'm also running Unread Books Glow, and this is kind of a similar situation where you would see those glowing books all over the place, which means that Alchunil has not read them. They're great for gameplay because they point out books that you haven't read, because there are books all over the place in this game, and the collector and everybody who plays these type of open world games is that side of those people tend to come out pretty strongly. So it becomes a massive pain to kind of keep track of all the books that you have encountered or read or have. Ooh, another rabbit. So for gameplay purposes and collecting purposes, that's great. It also points out skill books with a red glow. But again, it kind of takes you out of the immersive cinematic quality of the videos that I'm producing lately. So I have set that mod to not show regular books. Actually, it will only show skill books, and I'm okay with that. So you won't see the bright blue glowing books anymore all over the place, but you will see red glowing books here and there. Okay, what is detecting me? And I'm okay with that. I can reconcile that with the roleplay here because it can be kind of interpreted as these whispers pointing out to Alchunil, where tomes of knowledge are held. And I like that. That works. And then I don't miss free level ups anywhere. Okay, so that about does it for gameplay mechanics, system settings, and mods. So now let's go ahead and work on the story. Oh, that rabbit's got to go down. Oh, I missed. One more shot, and then I'm going to give up on him. Oh my god, he's way back there. I don't think I got him. There's a deer over there. Oh my gosh, it's dark out here. It's really hard to see. Got him. Alright. So that sort of yellow glow and that sound effect means that it's one of the passive abilities that I get through Imperious that ups my armor rating and gives me more fire resistance. That only is triggered under combat situations, so that means that somebody detected me, some hostile enemy in the area detected me, even though he seems to not be detecting me anymore. So I'm not sure that's what that was, but that's why I got all freaked out there for a second. This is still very dangerous, collecting ingredients in the world at legendary difficulty. Wow, we made some good time along Lake Honrick here. So yeah, I was going to talk about the story. So Alchunil, his name came from alchemy. I think that's fairly obvious. Making characters' names similar to the skill that I'm going to be focusing on with them is just kind of an organizational tactic for me. It helps me keep track of my character concepts and things like that. Helps me remember them, because I do like to revisit these characters and character concepts all the time. Anytime I have like a new load order that I want to mess around with, or do a new install of Skyrim with a bunch of new mods and stuff, I always like to revisit old character concepts and see how I can flesh them out in a new game. Anyway, Alchunil, his last name is Streppin, and that is not his family's, I would say his bloodline's real name. His family's name was stripped from history, stripped from all records, because they did something very offensive to the rest of the great houses in Morrowind. So Streppin is kind of like a scarlet letter, sort of a mark of shame, I would say. Kind of like Jon Snow in Game of Thrones. Whenever there's a bastard child, he's not able to take the name of his father, so instead they give him the last name Snow. That's kind of how this is. Streppin in Old English means to have been stripped, which is also what this name means. So the other great houses, they stripped Alchunil's bloodline of pretty much everything. Their fortune, all their land holdings, all their influence politically, as well as they stripped all of the family history from any written record whatsoever. So if you go to the Imperial Library and try to find any information on the great house that was replaced by the name Streppin, you won't be able to find any of it. Which is very lore friendly, because, you know, there pretty much are only a few great houses that are existing in Elder Scrolls lore. You got your House Lalu, House Redoran. I'm recording right now, so I can't think of very many others. Indaris, I think, is another one. A few others. But Alchunil's house, his original house name, was never mentioned anywhere, and that's because it's been stripped from the records. Now, what his family did right, there we go. Archery is getting okay, I think, if we're able to one-shot a wolf that without even being undetected. Now, what Alchunil's family did, I'm not going to reveal yet, but Alchunil doesn't know. He doesn't know anything about his family because all records have been purged. So he just kind of had to live with the mark of shame of the name Strepen as the rest of his family. But yeah, that's what's going on there. His time in Morrowind as a master chef for counselor of House Redoran. So, I'm sorry, I'm reading verbatim off of my little talking points list here. So there was a very powerful counselor from House Redoran, which I believe in the Skyrim timeline is the most powerful of the great houses of Morrowind. So he had a pretty comfortable life in Morrowind, especially compared to others in that situation. So if you're not familiar with the history of Morrowind, the recent history of Morrowind in the timeline of Skyrim, a massive volcano erupted massively in the center of the province of Morrowind, kind of drowning everything out in ash there. And it just decimated the economy, the agriculture, pretty much everything in the province. And that's why you have so many refugees fleeing Morrowind going to Windhelm, just because things just aren't really sustainable. A living is not sustainable in Morrowind for the most part for most people. But Alchunil was fortunate enough to be employed by a very rich and powerful counselor. So he grew pretty accustomed to a comfortable living, even with his mark of shame in the name of Strepen. He had a pretty comfortable life, pretty cush gig going on there. So it was kind of a big culture shock for him to leave Morrowind and head into Windhelm, where all the Nords kind of looked at him with disgust as a Dunmer. And he had to start living in squalor as opposed to refined comfort. So there was a lot of adjustment that he had to make, but as you can see, he adjusted, and he's doing quite well in his new role in the world here. So yeah, as we talked about, he was sort of forced at first to scour the sewers for anything remotely edible. He scavenged raw materials and gear from things that he found in the sewer and the outskirts of the city, until he acquired enough skill, wealth, and decent equipment. Looks like I've already foraged all the ingredients in the area here. To feel comfortable enough to leave the security of the city walls and venture out on his own. He was also feeling a little bit restless because he knew that counselor that he accidentally poisoned and killed his family was going to be sending bounty hunters after him, and he knew how ruthless and relentless these Redoran trackers were. So he needed to get away from the Morrowind border. Let's take a look at the map. So these are the Velothi Mountains over here. Morrowind is over here to the east, and Alchunil followed a group of refugees to the west here to Windhelm through this little path right here, through the Velothi Mountains. He was feeling a little restless over here, so he wants to make his way west and south away from that Velothi mountain pass over here. So that's when he found his way into Whiterun, started learning more alchemy with the apothecary there, Arcadia, and he happened across Ryek's End, which is where he is shacking up currently. Well, not super currently. Right now he's living in the mead cellar here in Riften. But anyway, that's where he again came up with a poison that he did not know what the effects were. He did not have any other test subjects, so he tried it on himself, and he blacked out. He woke up a vampire and hearing voices. Now, who are these voices? Well, I'm not going to tell you who the voices are. It was theorized that it might be Hermaeus Mora. That wasn't a bad guess, because these voices seem to be fairly omnipotent. They know everything, it seems like, and they impart that knowledge on to Alchunil as frequently as they can. And if there is a sort of personification of omnipotence in Elder Scrolls lore, it is Hermaeus Mora, the Daedric entity of knowledge and secrets and things like that. It's an interesting theory. That's all I'm going to say about it. All will be revealed in time. I will say that there are plenty of hints in what the voices are saying and in what situations they started speaking to Alchunil. It's not super duper cryptic. I think you can figure it out if you put the pieces together, but I also want to maintain some mystery about the whole thing. I think that'll make it a better story, and it will make the reveal of everything a little more impactful when we do get to it. And we will get to it, I promise. So yeah, then the voices told him to go to Riften and seek out a gentleman by the name of Brynjolf. Now, Brynjolf, do I have a potion of feather? That would be nice, right? Oh, feather's not going to help me. I'm over encumbered by a lot. Yeah, so the voices told Alchunil to go to Riften and look for a man named Brynjolf. Now, he wasn't that verbose about it. They just said Riften, Brynjolf, and they also mentioned fortune, influence, and shadow. Now, anybody familiar with the Thieves Guild quest and Brynjolf and everything sort of knows, you might be able to figure out what all that is alluding to. Now, also for anybody who is... Ooh, I just ate some putrefied flesh. Delicious. Now, anybody who's familiar with the Thieves Guild quest is probably not going to be super surprised by what happens in the next few episodes. I'm going to pretty much follow that, the quest, in a pretty straight trajectory there. I am going to add in a few wrinkles through what the Whispers are telling him about the situations and things like that, and some creative editing to kind of skip things and mix up some sequences on some things. But yeah, that's where we're at. So Alchunil is now in Riften. And do I still have my Thieves Guild armor? I want my... No, I don't have Thieves Guild armor. Okay, interesting. Anyway. So yeah, Alchunil is now in Riften, and he's working with the Thieves Guild. The first thing that Mercer, who the Whispers labeled as a murderer and betrayer, first thing he had Alchunil do as a fledgling thief was infiltrate Golden Glow Estate, which is a heavily fortified bee farm, which none of the other master thieves in the guild could get into. So Alchunil figured, that's probably a suicide mission. He got the distinct impression that Mercer somehow was able to hear the Whispers that were talking to him, which kind of had him taken aback. And that is why Mercer assigned him to this suicide mission. Now, obviously, Mercer underestimated Alchunil. Alchunil was able to complete the quest without too much issue at all. And now he's back. and this is where the story will take off in the next episode, is how Mercer and Alchunil are coming to terms with he knows that I know, and he knows that I know that I know that he knows, sort of thing. And sort of the aftermath of all that. What else? Yeah, so you probably won't be too surprised where we're going from here if you have played the game any significant amount of time, which I think most people who are watching this at this point have. Yeah, so I think that's it, right? I think I hit all my talking points. And as you can see through, what I've been doing in the background here, just foraging ingredients, learning alchemical effects. I haven't started mixing up potions yet, but I will very shortly. It doesn't really make too much of a compelling Skyrim video, does it? That's why I've opted to take the cinematic, story-driven approach to this, so I can kind of skip all this mundane ingredient picking solution. Potion and poison mixing nonsense that is varying degrees of fun to certain players, but I can't imagine watching this for hours on end. That's why I've taken this series in a different direction than sort of my previous Let's Play stuff, but I think I'm onto something pretty good here. I'm enjoying doing the highly produced content and being able to tell the story in a very specific way without fumbling over my words while I fumble over the gameplay, trying to do a good job at both. This allows me to take my time, concentrate on one thing at a time, and actually do some writing of some compelling dialogue and some story progression stuff. But yeah, I think that's it for this episode. If you have any questions about mods, my game, the story of Alchunil, or you just want to talk about Skyrim, go ahead and leave a comment. Or even better yet, join the Couch Warrior TV Discord. There's a bunch of Skyrim role players that love talking about this stuff over there. I'll leave a link in the description as always. Also, as always, I will see you next time, and until then, take care. Bye.